You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday, finally back. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Holt, publisher of Wolverines Wire. I honestly did not even realize it was Tuesday. I thought yesterday was Sunday. Therefore, granted, it was a late travel night. Didn't get home until super late, missed the Super Bowl, all that stuff. But nonetheless, I am back from Florida. Grandfather is up and down. Still definitely appreciate any and all prayers that you send your way. But obviously we missed all the news. I knew it was going to happen this way. I was on my flight down to Florida and everything broke, and it turned out what we thought was going to happen, and then the changes that ended up happening that we thought was going to happen, it all kind of merged together. Co-offensive coordinator situation with Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss. So we're basically a week after that's been announced, but now finally getting to the news here since I am back in studio and whatnot. So we will address that. Also have a couple other things that we want to get into. Some things about Jim Harbaugh being the number one coach in the Big Ten, according to 24/7 Sports. The ESPN SP Plus Advanced Analytics, their rankings are out as well. And we'll probably also maybe touch on the Athletic putting re-ranking the 2018 recruiting class, and it looked really good for Michigan. So we will get into all of that stuff. At least we're going to try. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to talk about something we've been surmising about for a while, right? Like, because it's not. We've talked about it, you know, but staff is set. Jesse Minter is the defensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinators in Matt Weiss and Sharon Moore, which honestly, I mean, that's fine. You know, that's absolutely great, honestly. And I know there's people out there that worry about too many cooks in the kitchen. You know, the fun thing about it all is, I mean, there will be play callers depending on, I'm assuming, down and distance, situation, all of that kind of stuff. No one complained about a by committee situation in 2016, right? Everything was working. People complained about it more in 2017 when it wasn't. That was definitely too many cooks, because not only did you have Pep Hamilton and Tim Drevno, you also had Tim Drevno sharing his duties with Greg Fry. It was just a lot of different things kind of going on all at the same time. So it's one of those things, though. Now I think that this is a good situation because it's good. You know, you get to retain Sharon. Matt Weiss brings his expertise, and they get to do it together. We see this all the time, you know, with dual coordinators in different spots. I mean, Michigan might have had Tim Drevno and Jed Fish, rather. But at the same time, I mean, it really, when we talk about the offense, who the offensive coordinator was those first 2 years, I think we kind of more think now, at least in retrospect, that it was Jed Fish, because things certainly looked different. I mean, he was the pass game coordinator, but that went to show you how important he was to what Michigan was trying to do. So I think it's great. Like I said the other day, the only thing that I have trepidation about, don't get me wrong, because I love Grant Newsome being elevated. I think he is deserving. I think he's going to resonate really well with recruits. I think it's really cool for the sake of, I just remember covering him as a recruit, you know, not for very long, but I remember, I think it was more when he was coming in, but I remember covering him more so as a guy that was battling for that left tackle spot with Ben Bredesen, and now he's a coach on staff. I mean, that is the type of meteoric rise that you like to see. I mean, he's been heavily involved behind the scenes for years now, and it's well deserved. My only trepidation is it's not on his end. And I'm not worried about the safeties. but moving Jay Harbaugh off of a spot that I feel like he is an elite coach at. I think he'll do just fine. I think people overblow the whole, well, he didn't play the position, that type of thing. I think people overblow that type of stuff when it comes to assistant coaches. And Jay hasn't played football. He knows he knew how to coach tight ends. He gave Michigan the first 1,000-yard rusher since Fitzgerald Toussaint. So I think that he's doing excellent things in the coaching realm. And he was obviously unbelievable at special teams. And I think he'll bring the same type of deal to the safeties. But I really wish they could have found a way to keep him at tight ends. I understand it's more of a natural coaching fit for Grant Newsome at tight ends. It's just a full staff. And then you bring back, pretty much everyone else. I mean, obviously we knew about Mike Elston being hired, voracious recruiter, excellent coach. That should be a home run situation. Hilo, big fan of what he was able to do with the linebackers. Clinkscale, obviously big fan of what he did with the defensive backs. So, all in all, and then obviously I didn't even mention Ron Bellamy at wide receivers. That's the position he played, and while we've seen, Bellamy working with defensive backs as a former wide receiver and the benefits that can play, or Josh Gaddis being a former defensive back, being a safety, working with wide receivers in offense. Sometimes that works out really well, but it'll be interesting to see because, look at Mike Hart, former running back, working with running backs. It'll be interesting to see if the wide receivers can take a step forward with a guy that played the position at Michigan. And, Bellamy is an ace on the recruiting trail and is just awesome. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of getting to know him over the course of the years as he was West Bloomfield's head coach. So super excited about what the staff is. Maybe he feels a little muddled with the co-coordinator. It doesn't feel like the big splash hire, but you keep the continuity, and I think especially on offense, that's so important considering you lose 3 starters. Otherwise, everyone's coming back. I think that's going to be – I think it has the potential to be really good. And ESPN agrees. So we are going to talk about the ESPN SP Plus rankings as well as the 24/7 Sports having Harbaugh as the top coach in the Big Ten, where he ranks overall. I know, all old news that happens when I'm out of town. But before we move on, first, listen, football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds total, player performance props to where to find where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball either. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's continue on discussing some different things here. I do want to. I had this all pulled up. I prepare, but halfway. So anyway, I posted this on Wolverines Wire. This actually posted about a week ago as well. But Bill Connolly updated the SP Plus rankings for which are predictive rankings that take into account the recruiting rankings, previous success, and returning production. And he has Michigan coming in at number 4th in the country, which unfortunately is still second in the Big Ten because, of course, Ohio State with C.J. Stroud returning. They feel like the defense is going to be even better for Ohio State. Obviously, they feel like Michigan might take a step back defensively. Michigan, though, number 4th. So I think that says a lot, and especially when you look at where they think Michigan is going to rank from an offensive standpoint. They have Michigan as the 5th best offense going into the 2022 season. The 5th best. And the defense 19th. I mean, that is obviously, I think, a dream come true to a lot of people who've just been waiting for this offense to be as explosive as a lot of these modern college football offenses are. Now, of course, they have Ohio State as the number 1 offense. They have them, I believe, as the number 11 defense. They do. There's still obviously a lot of stuff that needs to work out for Michigan. Offensively, you feel like with the new coordinators, the co-coordinators, probably things are going to remain pretty much the same. The playbook's probably going to remain pretty much the same, all that kind of stuff. But you feel like with Cade and or JJ, you feel like with Blake Corum, you feel like with Donovan Edwards, this cadre of wide receivers, although there is on 3 is saying that Mike Sainristil still is moving to safety, which will be interesting, or at least defensive back. So we'll see if that comes to fruition in the spring, if it happens, if it sticks, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's right there for the Wolverines, and I think that certainly the way that I see it is that Michigan very well could go into. I'm not predicting this. I predicted Michigan to go into the Ohio State game 10-1, but they certainly could be 11-0. The big challenges are the 4th. Ranked in the Big Ten, number 16 overall, Penn State, but that's a home game. 16 overall, 56th offense, 7th ranked defense. Michigan State, 5th in the Big Ten, 17th overall, 35th offense, 17th ranked defense. Which, I mean, that's pretty high. I mean, Michigan State's got to hope they get a bit better in the pass defense. And then they play at Iowa, who's number 7, 26 overall. 3rd best defense, 74th offense. They avoid Wisconsin and Purdue. They do play Nebraska, again, at home. All these games are at home for the most part. Maryland, number 10, at home, which is their number 41 overall. And, you know, I think that bodes well for the Wolverines, that the schedule, it just kind of plays out the way it does. But again, they're getting some love from the advanced analytics. I think they should. I think it will be shocking to some of those Ohio State fans out there that still, I see, for whatever reason, crowing that Michigan loses everybody when they see that the offense doesn't lose anybody, except for, I mean, yes, Hassan Haskins, who scored 5 touchdowns on them, which reminds me of a funny reply. I don't remember what that I posted, and someone brought up Hassan Haskins in my mentions, and an Ohio State person said, "Who?" And it's like, really? You don't remember the guy that ran 5 touchdowns on you? All right. A little bit of salt. But nonetheless, I think that the schedule bodes well. I think that the analytics certainly show that Michigan's in an advantageous position from a talent perspective, and if they can get some production from some of these other guys, obviously on defense, Chris Jenkins, if he can take a big step forward, if Gabe Newberg can come back from his injury and provide a lift, he was drawing one of my former sources who's no longer in the building and hasn't been for a couple years, but he had told me that Gabe Newberg, when everything was said and done, will remind everybody of Chase Winovich. Unfortunately, we did not get to see it because he's been injured. But I'm really looking forward to, if that can happen, that'd be great, obviously. And then seeing what guys like Braden McGregor can do. So it'll be interesting. And also interesting will just be, obviously, how does Jesse Minter make this defense work? Is he going to do? There's been a lot of the consternation on from some of the Space Coyotes out there, Colin TJ, some of those, whether or not Michigan with Jesse Minter will run cover 7, which is what gave Ohio State so many fits. I don't think they necessarily need to if they find something else that can work, but you hope that obviously you have that in the bag and can use it. So, yeah, that is that. But let's move on to a little bit of talk about I think that this is interesting given how much everyone's hated on Jim for so long. 24/7 Sports did a top 15 coaches in the country heading into 2022. And coming in at number 6 overall, number 1 in the Big Ten, is Jim Harbaugh. Here's what 24/7 Sports had to say. No coach saw his ranking. No coach in this ranking saw a bigger jump from the 2021 season to now than Jim Harbaugh. Was coming off the most notable showing of his tenure at Michigan after winning the Big Ten and reaching the college football playoff. Took out Ohio State for the first time, humiliated Iowa in the league title game, and earned National Coach of the Year accolades from the AP after his program's first conference championship since 2004. His flirtation with the NFL seems to have led to a somewhat rocky return to Ann Arbor in recent weeks with coordinator changes, but Harbaugh expects to be back in the thick of the playoff hunt in 2022 and beyond with a talented roster. Now, that said, I mean, every bowl projection that I've seen, too early bowl projection, has Michigan going to a New Year's Six bowl and Ohio State going to the college football playoff. All right, fine, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I guess they're getting love. They haven't reached the point where they're going to get the type of love that Ohio State has obviously earned by being there in a very, very regular basis. But nonetheless, I mean, it is nice to see it a little. It's happening a little bit, although I think I'm still seeing a lot of Penn State, Wisconsin hype like we do every year. I would actually, and this is me being very, very objective, probably a little too magnanimous. I think Michigan State deserves a little bit of talk, more so than probably Penn State and Wisconsin. That's just me, though, because they're a very lucky team, but they find ways to win. Will it continue without Kenneth Walker, with Jalen Berger? I mean, we'll see, but sometimes I just think like, hey, you know, these teams were very reactionary in the sport of college football. It's always like a matter of like, well, this team was good for 1 year, so they're going to be good forever now. This team was bad last year. They're going to be bad forever now, especially if it's Michigan. If Michigan's 9-3, it's like, well, they're bad. And then, you know, Iowa State's like 8-4, and it's like, they're so good. They're going to be so good. They're going to North Carolina 7-6. Like, yeah, but you have to understand, Mac Brown is about to win 16 national championships in a row. That's where they're at. It's silly, it's absurd, and then we throw in USC and Texas and all this stuff, like, because they're the backiest back teams of all time, right? It's like a joke me and my best friend always used to have from back in like 2004. The championship caliber Minnesota Vikings or the championship caliber Washington Redskins, because they weren't very good. I mean, they were okay, right? They were like make it to the playoffs and losing the wild card. But like back in that era, it was like the talk about those two teams was like, they're just so good. That's what USC and Texas gets. And apparently North Carolina as well. But I like at least that we're seeing some of this hype. But Michigan's going to have to pretend that it isn't feeding into the hype at all. It starts next week. Spring practice happening very, very soon. All right, let's move on. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket as well. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto, it's also a family business, serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you would need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today. Find the solution for your auto parts needs. I've used it so many times. It saved me thousands of dollars. That's a true story. Anyway, go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, like right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, finally, let's finish out with a little bit of talk about this athletic 2018 recruiting class re-rank. They had Michigan, which this was keeping in mind, if you don't count Harbaugh's first class, being that it was kind of, he showed up December 30th, didn't exactly have a time to put a full class together. The 2018 class was his least heralded. It was 22nd in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. The Athletic re-ranked it at number 3 overall. I remember I was still at 24/7 Sports at that time. I remember being on the message boards and people were so up in arms. I remember being out to dinner with my grandparents in Highland, Michigan, at a little place called Duke's, when Ronnie Bell committed, and it was one of those things. It was very similar to like when Kwity Paye committed. I was at a coffee shop when that happened, and it was one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to deal with a lot of anger. So, but obviously Ronnie Bell is now a star, a guy that people are looking at as being a potential first, second, third round pick next year. I've been screaming his praises for quite a long time. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, the highest rated pledge in that class, looking to go number 1 overall. Jake Moody, Cam McGrone's already long gone, played for the Patriots this year. And yeah, he was a 5-star by 24/7 Sports, so he was the highest rated in their non-composite, which I thought he deserved, having seen him play in person down in Indianapolis for Lawrence Central. But so many good players in the 2018 class, and a lot of them not necessarily very heralded, just because my memory's failing me here. See if I can mention a couple others. Jalen Mayfield, obviously in the draft now. Hassan Haskins. Anyone who's been listening to this podcast for years, if you're relatively new, then you've just heard me tout this. But anyone who's listened for years will tell you that I had been talking about Hassan Haskins since the podcast started, particularly going into 2018 Bowl Prep, when I was told he was the most physically gifted running back they had on the roster. But I remember in 2017, I remember talking to a now departed staff member who was in the recruiting department on the field at the Indiana game, and they said, like, we're going to offer Hassan Haskins. We are trying to keep it quiet because we don't want anyone else to discover what we know we've discovered. And he was a 3-star out of Eureka, Missouri, and obviously turned out to be everything that you want. It turned out to be an absolute beast. They included Shea Patterson in this, which, I mean, he transferred in that year, so fine. Vincent Gray, who's declared for the draft, he obviously ended up being pretty good in the end. Ryan Hayes, who's still with the program. So that's everyone, like they've mentioned, as the top signees. I mentioned Luke Schoonmaker, who's still going, at T number 2 at the moment, and a touchdown machine last year. So it's one of those things where, I mean, that becomes the best class that Michigan's had. Obviously, they rose to the occasion. What Michigan needs to do now is it needs to get that type of production in the 3 stars and all of those from everybody. Because you look at 2017 and the amount of attrition that came from that class. We've done this before. It's not a fun experiment, but let's see if I can do it again real quick. The amount of attrition that came out of the 2017 class is insane. Donovan Peoples-Jones graduated early, or left. Well, he did graduate, but he left early. Left with a year early. Aubrey Solomon transferred. Cesar Ruiz left a year early. Luigi Villain transferred. Drew Singleton transferred. Ambry Thomas wasn't really going to leave a year early, but kind of did. Jordan Anthony transferred. Chuck Filiaga stayed the 5 years, but also transferred. Tariq Black transferred. Dylan McCaffrey transferred. Nico Collins also was going to play 4 years, but transferred. Oliver Martin transferred. Josh Ross, there's our first one, exhausted his intercollegiate eligibility at Michigan. James Hudson transferred. Darren Irving Bay transferred. Jalen Kelly Powell transferred. Corey Malone Hatcher, medically retired. Omori Samuels, legal problems. Donovan Jeter still has a year left, but I don't know that he's around still. Jeraymon Hall transferred. Benjamin St. Just, declared by Michigan as medically retired before he transferred. Andrew Stuber exhausted his intercollegiate eligibility. There's number 2. Jamarick Woods transferred. Brad Hawkins exhausted his intercollegiate eligibility. Joel Honigford still with the team. Philip Paya transferred. Kwity Paye exhausted his intercollegiate eligibility. Ben Mason exhausted it. Kurt Taylor transferred. Brad Robbins still with the team. That is an alarming miss rate. That is how many, like, you need the guys that you bring in to stay with the team. And obviously that didn't happen in 2017. 2016, let's go back just again real quick, because then I want to go to 2018 and then we'll close this up. Rashawn Gary left a year early. Ben Bredesen all 4 years. Brandon Peters transferred. David Long left a year early. Devin Asiasi transferred. Michael Onwenu all 4 years. Kareem Walker transferred. Kekoa Crawford transferred. Lavert Hill all 4 years. Ron Johnson transferred. Carlo Kemp all 5 years or whatever. Devin Bush 3 years. Chris Evans all 5 years essentially. Nick Eubanks left with a year, but essentially was there all 4 years. Eddie McDoom transferred. Kalik Hudson, all, full eligibility. Elise Ambase, I don't even want to get into that dude. I almost did for a second, but whoo, boy, that dude was something else. Nate Johnson, legal trouble. Quinn Nordine, full eligibility. Josh Uche left with a year of eligibility, but did full 4 years. Kingston Davis. This class has a lot of apparently issues, but nonetheless, a little bit better. I don't want to rehash any more of that because that got depressing in a hurry. But then you look at 2018, Aiden Hutchinson, Cam McGrone, Mustafa Muhammad did transfer, Miles Sims transferred, Joe Milton transferred, Jalen Mayfield, Ryan Hayes, Jamon Green, Christian Turner did transfer, but makes sense given everything. Taylor Upshaw still there. Sammy Faustin's transferring. Ben Van Sumeren transferred. Julius Welskoff is still here. Vincent Gray, Michael Barrett, Luke Schoonmaker, Hassan Haskins, German Green, Ronnie Bell, Jake Moody. That's what you need. So when you look at 2019, now Daxton Hill, Chris Hinton, Jack Charbonnet, those are your top 3 guys. They're gone. But you still got Mozzie Smith, Trente Jones, Nolan Rumler's gone. You still got Cornelius Johnson, Trevor Keegan, Jalen Perry, Anthony Solomon's gone, Carson Barnhart's still there. Cade McNamara, Giles Jackson's gone, Ojabo's gone, Quentin Johnson's still around, Eric All, Mike Morris, DJ Turner, Charles Thomas and Zach Carpenter are gone. Jack Stewart, I'm not 100% sure if he's around still or not. Mike Sainer still, Gabe Newberg, George Johnson is gone. Quintel Kent, medically retired, Joey Velasquez. So that's a lot. You're getting a lot of production from the majority. And most of those guys are still either still here or just graduated. So that's what you need. And then I look just briefly at 2020. I'm not going to read a bunch of names. It's similar. All these are guys that are starting to step up. Very well could be big contributors, whether they're guys that we've heard of. Nikai Hill Green, who's obviously been a starter. Matthew Hibner, who haven't really seen much of. A couple guys have transferred out. But, again, Chris Jenkins, you think that he's going to be a starter this year. And he was your second lowest rated recruit. That's what you need. In a good, not in the sense of we don't have anybody, in the sense of they are better than what the recruiting ranking said. So it's a lesson to not stargaze. All right, camera's going to shut off here momentarily anyway. So that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for watching and or listening. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll figure out what to talk about when the time comes. But anyway, thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.